Hey, Mark from Sound Matters here, talking all things vinyl, and today we're taking a look at John Coltrane's Sonship, which is the VMP Classics release for July, the month just gone. I've just received this in the post. I'm looking forward to checking it out. This is actually my first introduction to John Coltrane, as I've just been discovering so many great jazz artists from over the years as a rock musician myself and a rock fan primarily, but somebody who's broadened their music taste dramatically as an adult, if you like. And I'm really looking forward to digging into this one because obviously John Coltrane is such a huge name in jazz. I can't wait to dig into it and see what it's like. We're going to unbox it together, just talk a little bit about the record. And for those of you who are already John Coltrane fans, I want you to let me know what you think of this record down in the comments below. So here we have it, John Coltrane, Sonship, and we've got this as a VMP Classics release, and as usual, it's cut from the original analog master tapes. It's an AAA release on 180 gram vinyl, cut by Ryan Smith at Sterling Sound. So pretty usual for a VMP release there, so expecting good things in that regard. It's an interesting album in John Coltrane's portfolio because it was recorded in 1966, which is the same year that I Love Supreme was released, but this album, these recording sessions, were not released until 1971, which is after his death. So an unusual one in his portfolio, and I think one that's often overlooked for this reason, but it's still supposed to be a very important release in his discography in terms of his growth and representation of him as a musician. So I'm really looking to delving into this. This will be interesting for me because I don't own any John Coltrane records yet. I've heard about I Love Supreme as a absolute essential record to have in everybody's collection, so that's definitely on my list to pick up. But this is going to be an interesting place to start, and you know, part of being subscribed to something like VMP Classics is that you're discovering things partly by sort of serendipity and sort of chance, if you like. So it's going to be interesting for me and should hopefully prompt me to go discover more stuff by John Coltrane. This is much more from what I've heard so far on the avant-garde side of jazz, but I'm definitely very excited to dig into it. This is also an unusual record in that it wasn't his usual studio engineer that looked after these sessions. It wasn't his usual studio engineer. Here is Rudy Van Gelder, and these sessions were actually recorded by Bob Simpson and were overlooked by Bob Thiel here, who was the man in charge of Impulse Records. So interesting record, can't wait to dig into it, but let's unbox it now and take a look at the record and the sleeve itself. So we can open it up here and see that we've got a lovely gatefold, which is actually unusual for a lot of VMP Classics releases, just because of the age of a lot of the records that they reissue. But it's always nice when you do get a gatefold, I think, because you get more experience for your money, you get more artwork for your money. And I just love the feel and look of a gatefold release. That's nice to see there. And as we open it up, we get some lovely imagery from the recording sessions themselves of John Coltrane's quartet, and we get the liner notes just explaining that we've got here. It was recorded on August the 26th, 1965 at RCA Victor Studios in New York, and their original recordings that were supervised by Bob Thiel, who was the main man behind Impulse Records. So I think I'm pronouncing that right. Thiel, I don't know, but if I've got that wrong, then you can let me know down in the comments below. So on the back here, we can see that the original release was on the Impulse label here, and we've got some association here, or this is reissued on the Verve label, which is interesting to see as well. But let's now take a look at the actual record itself and the booklet that comes with this. Record itself comes in a nice poly anti-static sleeve, which is always nice to see. I hate it when people cheap out and provide those paper sleeves. They're no good at protecting the record, and they tend to leave those horrible paper flakes all over the surface of the record that you have to get rid of as well. So nice to see when it comes in one of these poly sleeves. Nice extra touch. Vinyl is such a kind of luxury product, a premium product, and I think, you know, just go the extra mile, provide that poly sleeve and, you know, move on. It should be the way it is. So you can see the nice Impulse label there for the original Impulse Pulse label, and then the mention of Verve, which obviously associated with this release, this reissue. But yeah, it looks like a pretty flawless record as well. No visible signs of any nicks or imperfections in terms of that, which is always great to see. I'm always on the lookout for those horrible little tiny bubbles you get on the record's surface on so many new records, and I'm yet to actually see one of those on a VMP release. I've always been very impressed by the kind of quality of the pressing, so that's nice to see, and I hope when we get that on the turntable that's going to sound equally as good. But because it's from the original analog master tapes, and I've experienced a lot of the stuff that's been cut by Ryan Smith at Sterling Sound, and I've always been very impressed by the audio quality of these reissues. Now of course you get your simple booklet, which is just wrapped in this kind of cover like this, really nice and simple, but all this does is really just adds to the experience. I always think when you get some liner notes, and this is written by Mark Richardson on behalf of VMP, you just get that backstory behind the record. You hear a little bit perhaps about the recording sessions, who is involved, what it was all about, perhaps some of the kind of cultural aspects of the time as well. And I think just a little bit of knowledge about a release just greatly increases your enjoyment of it. I think if you just that little bit of extra knowledge perhaps makes you think more about it, and perhaps just gives you some of the context surrounding the music, and hopefully gives you a more enriched experience. So I always enjoy that. You find a nice comfortable armchair, sit back, pop the record on and check out those liner notes just to add to that whole experience. And that's it. That's Sunship by John Coltrane. Can't wait to hear this. Really looking forward to it, and this will be the start of my John Coltrane journey. So I just had to give this a quick spin before we wrap up here. My first impressions are absolutely amazing. If you love the whole idea of avant-garde or free jazz, that whole concept of throwing the raw book out, of freeing musicians of the shackles of kind of traditional chord progressions and the whole kind of traditional musicality of what music and what jazz traditionally is, then you are absolutely going to love this album. Obviously that makes it a much more challenging listen than anything like A Love Supreme or Miles Davis's A Kind of Blue, or any of those kind of traditional, more sort of classic, well-known jazz albums. This is much more erratic, much more kind of musicians just completely set free, but absolutely at the top of their game. And the fact that this came out the same year, or was recorded rather the same year as A Love Supreme, just goes to kind of the credit of just how much of a important milestone year this was, and for John Coltrane and his quartet, just how much they were on the top of their game at this time as musicians, and they were on a real journey of musical exploration to really get to new heights and explore new concepts and new ideas. If you love that kind of side of jazz, then you really must listen to this album and give it a full amount of your attention, and sit down and kind of just enjoy the pure raw musicianship on offer here. So that concludes today's video. Thank you ever so much for watching. Which John Coltrane record should I get next? Obviously, I've heard about A Love Supreme in terms of that as an essential record in anyone's collection, kind of on the level of Miles Davis, A Kind of Blue. It's that kind of level of record. I'm going to go get a copy of that because I don't have that in my collection already. So I'm looking forward to discovering more of John Coltrane's discography. This is obviously more on the avant-garde side of things in terms of his portfolio, but an important part of his discography and his journey as a musician. So I can't wait to dig in. Thank you ever so much for watching. I do want to hear from you down in the comments below. If you love this record, just please let me know what you think about it, and obviously which record I should check out next from John Coltrane. If you're new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. We discover music together as a vinyl community. That's what this channel is all about. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Keep spinning.